Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Today is a random strangeness episode where we talk about 3 or 4 strange situations. Today I have on the show with me Dan Ariade, someone who I've had the opportunity to work with professionally over years, and somebody I consider to be a friend. He works in pre-press production. He enjoys getting away into the mountains on weekends and has a general curiosity for all things strange and unexpected. Now, I know this because he and I have talked sometimes before about cool things. And Dan is a fun guy. He's interesting, and I'm glad to have him on the show with us today. So, with that, I want to welcome you, Dan, and say, how are you doing today, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing great, Tony. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat about some of these topics, and I'm excited to be on your podcast. It's gonna be great.
It's going to be great. Yeah. And these random topics are always fun. So everybody gets a little piece of a few things that we encourage people to spend more time and really do more investigation if you really have an interest in these items. So we'll give you a little taste, people, but really enjoy what you hear. Okay. So before we get into anything, though, I want to ask you, Dan, we are getting ready to air this sometime probably in November, but I want to know how your summer was. Did you have the opportunity to get away and relax up in the mountains like you love to do?
Oh yes, yes, and no. Not as much as I'd like to, but I don't think there's enough time in the summer for me to get as much mountain time as I would like. But yes, I did get up to the cabin, my family cabin, very remote, beautiful mountain range. I was able to get up there enough to recharge that battery
Yeah,
that I feel is only able to charge up there. And I'm hoping to get up there this weekend as well. So
that's awesome. Do you typically get in there deep into the fall months? And what's kind of the time frame when you're up able to get up there?
the roads start to get a little difficult to traverse about mid to late October. So we do
Gotcha.
get quite a bit of good. September is my favorite month. Even the early parts of October are just gorgeous. Starts to get chilly. There's a lot of hunting that goes on, which can be, I mean, depending on who you ask. I don't love it just because it means more traffic up by my special area.
Yeah.
But the animals are really active, especially around the mating season and stuff like that. So you get to see a lot of moose and elk and deer just basically everywhere, and it's just a fun time. The bugs are way less. You're not getting
Yes.
tormented by mosquitoes every second. It's just a really fun time to be up there and hike around, and you can see so deep because all the leaves are down. It's just fun to go and explore.
Yeah. When do the colors really start to pop out there? Is it getting into September or what normally happens?
I should go through my pictures from over the years. I want to say they're probably starting soon, but I would say yeah, probably mid September.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they start to fully change, some of those mountain ranges and some of the hillsides just look so gorgeous.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I'm glad you got up there almost as much as you wanted to this year.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I want to ask you a question. This is I've never asked you this before, but I'm curious. Are you a summer guy or are you somebody who really enjoys the fall and the holidays and that time of the year? What's your thing?
I am absolutely a summer guy,
Yeah.
mostly just because of being able to get outside.
Yeah.
That's the biggest factor. I'm hoping to make some changes this winter. I got some cross country skis. I'm
Mm,
going to try and force myself to still get up to the cabin as much as I can. We'll see. There's just something about those winter months. You get into January and those short days, and you can't get outside. You can't get the
yeah.
vitamin D. You're not breathing the good clean air from the from the wilderness, and so that to me just takes a toll, chips away at my resolve, and then
Yeah.
February rolls around, and I'm like, why am I depressed all the time?
Yes. Well,
But
it's funny that we talk about this because, like, so my wife and I are very different in this way. She loves the summer, and I don't like the heat too much.
right,
So it's kind of weird, right? I mean, she'll be like getting depressed as the summer's ending, and I'm getting all excited because football's coming, the holidays are coming. So we both have two different areas. So I love this time of the year, the fall and the holidays. It's really special to me. But I do love the summer too. Just the heat sometimes really gets me.
yeah, I can relate on that.
But you get to go up to the mountains, so you get to alleviate yourself of some of that heat. So that
Yeah,
might be the answer actually for me.
yeah, just seek higher ground. You got to get some altitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we get into the holiday time frames here, I'm curious, what is your favorite memory of like the holiday season, getting into the fall and that area? Do you have a special memory or experience that you had either over the years or while you were growing up?
Oh man, the first thing that comes to mind. I hate to lean on this because it happened at my cabin about
Mm,
4 years ago, but it was right as the season was changing. And maybe you'll find this interesting, maybe not. But it just
yeah.
popped in my head when you asked. This is literally just off the top of my head. But
Yeah.
I found it profound, and I still remember it vividly, and I forget what I did yesterday. So it's nice to have a memory that sticks. Last trip up to my cabin. I hope I don't talk about my cabin this whole time, but
Oh,
it's a
talk about
special
it.
it's a
Yeah,
special
talk about it.
place to me. And my last trip up there for the year, it was really cold. There was actually a little bit of snow on the ground. There's about 10 miles of dirt road to get to my cabin. That's why
Hmm.
if it starts snowing, you really can't. Nothing you can do. You're going to tear up the road. You're going to get stuck. There's nothing
Yeah.
you can do. On our way out, and it was kind of just like we were saying, closing up shop for the year, kind of saying goodbye, figuratively. And we get about maybe halfway through the dirt road, and we see a bull moose. Right? I mean, bull
Whoa.
moose. We've all seen them. They're exciting to see. One bull moose is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Big set of antlers, huge animals.
Oh yeah.
And you think, oh wow, it's a moose. We keep moving. There are about, I want to say, 13 bull
Wow.
moose. And I have video of this. I could
Wow.
send it to you. I'm like, this is not something I'm like just making up from history, but
Yeah.
13 bull moose just all grazing together like this big bachelor party after the mating season. I don't know. It seemed weird, but they were all just hanging out, and they were so docile. Like we got right next to them. We just like parked. I just got up
Holy
on top of the
cow.
car, and we were just sitting there watching them. They were coming up close to us, and these things are taller than the vehicle that we're sitting on. Like,
Right.
anyways, it was kind of a fun memory of a fall, and kind of also just like a nice way to close out the season up
Yeah.
there.
That is really cool. Yeah. I'm thinking of the first time when I moved to Utah and I was at the University of Utah campus in their parking lot getting my tennis rackets out, and there were deer running past my car while I was standing there, and I was floored because I'm an East Coast guy, and I hadn't
Oh, good.
seen that, and they were just running right past me, and it was one of the most amazing memories as well. So I know what you mean. It's
That's
crazy.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, memories are awesome, and some people have them for the holidays, for the time of the year, for events and locations. There's all kinds of things that make up awesome memories. Now, this episode, there's a few topics that probably should have been in October, but because there was so much content in October, unfortunately, some of these are going to roll into November. So that's probably when this one will air. But there's still a little creepiness in our episode today. And so I'm going to start with getting into something, at least our first topic, right, will be a little eerie in a sense. But before we even go there, I want to ask you this, Dan. Are you a movie guy or a book guy?
Ooh. Can you be both? Is that
You
an
can.
option?
Yeah.
I I fluctuate.
Yeah.
I'm a movie guy for a while. Right now, I'm a book guy. I'm binging a series that I'm like 6 books in, and
Wow.
I'm listening. I'm not a I should probably make that distinction. I listen to the audiobooks. I'm not a good reader.
Right.
But I'm binging a series of 13 books, and I'm 6 books in and just loving it. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I lean more towards audiobooks as well because then I can walk on the treadmill or just do
yeah,
different things. To just sit there, I find it tough to find the time to do that anymore. But
yeah,
okay,
right.
well, I'm going to ask you this. So this first picture here, um, you may or may not know what this is. If I can get it to move here, sorry. Okay, there we go. So one of my favorite actors when I was growing up was a guy that's right around my age. And I got a chance to see him acting from the very beginning. So this screen right here, there's a young guy who, this is 1985. I'm curious if you know who this actor is. Do you know?
Kind of looks like Jim Carrey, but
It is.
is it Jim Carrey? No
Nice
way.
work.
All
It
right,
is. Yeah.
awesome.
So a lot of people got to know him around 1990 to 1994 because he was on the Wayans Brothers. Uh, it was like a comedy show called In Living Color, and
Oh, okay.
he was on that. He was one of the big performers and one of the biggest draws on that show. But this movie here was the first time I saw him, and most people don't even know that he was in a movie back then, 1985, and he was in this film. And I'm going to move forward here with this picture. It was an interesting film. It was a film where he's a young guy in his teenage years. He has this girlfriend. And of course, all young guys in the 80s in the movies are doing what? They're chasing girls, right? And so that's kind of what this movie's about. But there he's a virgin, right? And so he's trying to play it off like he's, been with women, but at the same time he hasn't. And so in this movie, he meets the woman that I just showed in this picture right here at a bar, or it was kind of a bar. And she shows some interest in him, and all his friends are in the corner looking at him, going, go for it, man. You know what I mean? And so the movie kind of starts there, and little by little, she invites him over to her place, and she's got a limousine and a driver and all these different things. And in the end, really what's happening here is she's a vampiress. Is that right? A female vampire. Is that what they call them? I don't know.
I didn't know there was a female that or like a different word for it. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Not sure. I may be making that word up, everybody, but
Hey, I think it
I'm
works.
going with it. So her goal is, because she's a little older, she's in this movie, I think like 100 years old. Her her position is, I mean, and so she needs to stay young, right? So she needs to do what? She needs to take some blood from a young virgin. So that's really what this movie's about. She's trying to bite him. It's got to be 3 times in order for her to have youth forever. And the movie goes in that direction. And this picture right here is when he's been bitten once, and he's starting to have some issues, right? He's starting to sweat. He's starting to be sensitive to light. He needs to wear dark glasses. He has the urge for raw meat, stuff like that, So it's kind of crazy. And then in this picture, he doesn't actually turn into a vampire, but in a dream, this is what he sees himself as. And so it was a fun movie, right? But I'm bringing that all up just to say vampires. It's been part of our lore. It's Halloween. It's all these different things, and everybody knows about vampires. But I'm curious, if I were to tell you that there is a condition out there where somebody could actually sort of turn into a vampire, what would you think about that?
Well, as you know, I'm pretty skeptical. I like to question everything.
Sure.
But I'm open to it. That's the thing. I'm skeptical, but I'm curious.
Yes.
I would ask for more information because that sounds fascinating.
Right. Well, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Our first topic is actually a condition called porphyria, which is also known as vampire syndrome. Show you a picture here. Well, that's Once Bitten. That's the movie that Jim Carrey was in. But this young woman right here is, I mean, she's a girl, really a child, and she's got this condition, and it's a crazy condition. It's a condition that affects your hemoglobin or red blood cells, and it creates all kinds of havoc in people to the point where, like, they start having certain vampire type traits. And if you see the picture here, for those of you that are listening to this podcast, there's a picture of this young girl, and her complexion is really, it's almost like she's been burned in the sun, right? The way it looks. Her eyes are bloodshot. She just looks like she's been through hell, really. But this is the condition, porphyria. And it happens to young people and old people. And this is pretty scary, because you look at this and you go, wow, what would you do if this was your child or your cousin or something like that, you know? This is another picture here of a person with porphyria. And really, this just shows, with some better lighting, the complexion issues that can come up. I mean, when you look at this picture here, the first thing I think of is the first stage when a vampire gets too close to sun and their skin starts to welt and their stuff like that. It starts to turn real, get these weird patterns and stuff like that. And this is a real scenario for a person that has this condition. But these are mellow, right? These are not terrible. We go into these next pictures, and we see how this condition can actually disfigure people's faces. Now, for those of you that are listening and not watching this episode, these two young boys are, they kind of look like little vampires. They've got fangs. They're very pale. And so this condition can affect your skin, can cause blisters. Your skin can actually thin. There can be crusting, scarring, redness, swelling, itching, and, like we said earlier, sensitivity to the sunlight. So it's kind of crazy. Now, Dan, did you get a chance to look at any of this? Did you run across some of the same kind of circumstances that these people have when they have this condition?
Yeah, I mean, when you sent me the topics, I immediately, obviously, I Googled it, but yeah, how do you pronounce it? Porphyria? Porphyria or Porphyria?
Yeah.
I went down that rabbit hole, and there's a bunch of different versions of it that are, all of them are terrifying, right? It's like there's acute onset versions of this. That I watched a video of this lady that it hit her in her 20s out of nowhere, and she had 15 years of surgeries, diagnoses, and all these things where they didn't figure it out until like 15 years later. She had all these surgeries. It was just a nightmare, just so sad. And so,
yeah.
But what I found fascinating on the topic of the skin element, there was another video I watched where they was talking about the UV radiation from the sun, right? How it hits our skin and actually penetrates right to our DNA levels. Every time you or I get sunburned, it's the UV radiation from the sun impacting our DNA. That's why you don't want to get sunburned too often. But the system we have in place, right, when your cells are healthy, your cells are operating correctly, we produce melanin, right, so our skin will darken to be able to handle that radiation where they can't.
Right.
So they freckle. That was the first picture, right? She was just all these freckles, and but also very swollen and very sore and tender looking skin. It's just
not fun.
Not fun at all. And look, it really makes you feel for these people that this happens to.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for bringing up the acute porphyria, because that's the thing I was going to bring up next. And thank you, because it is. I mean, that people, it's not just for when they're younger. I mean, it can happen at different points of your life. And that's the crazy thing about these, what appears to be like a genetic condition, is that you can have really some kind of impact to your genetics at any point in your life. And then you have these conditions that arise. So many of these conditions are weird like that. They can happen at different stages. So here's an interesting picture. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen this guy. He's an actor. I don't remember his name, but I've seen him in a lot of goofy type scary films back in the 80s and 90s. And I always wondered, why is he always the same character? And I didn't realize he has the condition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, this is what he looks like. Doesn't he look like a vampire to you?
Absolutely.
He really
Yes.
does. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, wow.
And then here's just another picture of a young guy that also has the condition. I mean, if you were to walk down the street and see somebody like this, in a black trench coat, I'd wonder, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the weird thing about this too. So they're saying, as we look into this, that there's other conditions that also can arise from this. It can affect your nervous system, cause weakness, dementia, hallucinations, paranoia. I mean, and one of the stories I heard, and as I read into this, is that in some cases it can cause your pee or urine to turn dark red. And there's some thought that people in the past, like if you go back hundreds of years, maybe if they saw this red urine or whatever, that they thought maybe these people were actually feasting on blood. And maybe it led to some of the lore and legends of vampires. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. No, it is. And does that tie into, maybe I misremembering this, but I swear there was a bit of information where it's not like they crave blood, but they need the iron, right?
Yes.
They're iron deficient. So maybe one person or maybe somebody in the past, was getting blood or drinking blood for the iron or a transfusion or something. And then it becomes that that fascination or that craving for blood, right? I mean, there's other things in life. I mean, someone might have an affinity. They're low on some mineral and they'll eat chalk, right?
Yeah,
I know
dirt
people,
or something.
Or dirt, right?
Yeah.
You'll get your body needs something. So it might be odd to someone who's not going to eat that, but
yeah,
your body's craving something or needs something.
Well, and here's another weird thing too with this condition. There's this whole thing about vampires and garlic, and believe it or not, this condition, they are sensitive to garlic.
Really?
So there's some connections there. It makes you wonder a little bit. Now, before we stray too far from the topic, though, there is another condition that's called Renfield's syndrome. I can't remember what. I think it's just called clinical vampirism is the other name as well. But this is a mental kind of condition or it's an illness, mental illness, where people actually have the desire to drink real blood. So that also lends to that thought. Like if you're in the 1700s and there's somebody that's munching out on a dead squirrel or something, you might think, oh, vampire, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
No, it is interesting.
Well, before we move off the topic, though, I did look, and it says that with the vampirism or the Renfield syndrome, that there is between 1892 and the year 2010, there have been 50,000 cases citing this condition. It's quite a few people.
50,000 since 1952, you say?
Since 1892.
1892. Wow.
To 2010. Yeah. It was cited in some psychiatric literature. Don't have the actual quote or the other. I'm not able to give you the citing here, but
no,
people can go look it up.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot more than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot more isolated and few and far between. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. So maybe between these two conditions, that might gave rise to the lore or the legend of vampires, or maybe they're just real. I don't know.
Or
which one?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, you're kind of taking the skeptic side. That's my job,
right? Yeah, part of me thinks it could be. In fact, those listening, if you want to go see my October, I had an October episode where I interviewed an author from New Orleans who wrote about vampires, and she gives an amazing story there about her account where she ran across somebody that came into her store that makes you wonder. So go back and listen to that episode, people. It'll be fun.
Awesome.
Okay. It's time for us to move to the next condition. And this next condition, I'm going to start off by asking you, are you a Avengers fan?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me
Big
too.
big time.
Me
Yeah.
too. And who is this guy right here on the screen?
It's Groot.
It's Groot. I know.
I am Groot.
I am Groot. A lot of times, people do this when they're younger. I've done it even as I'm older. I ask people, and it's a fun topic. If you could have a superpower, what would it be for you? Or which superhero would you be? Dan, do you have a favorite?
Oh, and are we in the Marvel universe only
Sure.
specifically?
Yeah, let's go Marvel.
Gosh, I'm kind of leaning, just because it's the most recent movie I watched,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm leaning like Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, I mean, it's a little gritty and brutal, but I mean, some pretty cool powers. But that's just because it's the most recent movie I've watched. I think if you had asked me this back when Infinity War and Endgame were coming out, I think I'd probably have a different tune. But Wolverine's awesome.
Oh, he is awesome. For me, I'm not sure either. I mean, I jump around in different thoughts. I do really, really like Thor, though. He's a stud, and that hammer and the long hair.
Oh yeah,
yeah, tough to beat that.
That's true. That's true.
One person I would not want to be is Groot, right?
I'm with you there.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to have bark for skin, right? And he can rejuvenate, which is cool, but I don't think I'd want that bark for skin. Yeah. But it does remind me of the next condition that we're going to talk about, which is a lot like this, unfortunately, for people. So it's a condition called tree man syndrome. And before our episode today and researching, Dan, have you ever heard of tree man syndrome?
I had never heard of it, and I'm going to be upfront with you. I didn't do too much digging because I looked at some of these pictures, and I couldn't handle it. I'm weak. I am not strong in this, and I mean, even just this one, it's heartbreaking.
It is. It really is.
And it gets so much worse than what we're seeing here. I can't even imagine.
Yes. And we're going to go into a few more pictures here, and I'm going to tell those who are listening and not watching this episode to check it out if you want to see it, but it is tough to see. And I really feel for some of these people and their condition. It's got to be terrifying and just difficult to live with. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are in third world countries where their medical opportunities are limited. So let's go ahead and look at the next picture here. So this is one of those pictures which is just not good to look at. I don't even know how this man is able to function. If you're looking at the picture, you can see he's sitting on the floor. The white pants are his knees down to his calves, and in front of those are his two arms and this hand that is just covered with this weird material, which is kind of like I don't even know how to explain it. It's kind of like nails or some keratin type thing. I'm not sure what it is.
It reminds me of like a mushroom fungal growth you'd see in like a deep rainforest.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's not fun to look at. So these growths happen, they can be widespread throughout your body, but they can also be confined to like your hand or your foot or your face. So it looks like there's different degrees of this. In this particular situation, we're looking at a man whose hand, maybe both hands, are completely unusable, and his feet as well. I mean, you can't wear shoes with this, and it cannot be very comfortable, that's for sure. Next picture. This is also really tough to look at. This picture, everybody, is someone's hand where there's growths coming out of really everywhere. I mean, it's flaky, scaly. It can cause your skin to be, reddish brown. But probably the toughest thing about this is that it can be painful for people too. And what do you do with that? Especially if you're not in a place where there's good medical care, Right.
What do you do? How do you, I mean, how do you live like that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I'm at a loss for words for this stuff because it's just, it's, I didn't even know it existed until today or until
right.
you sent me this. It's
Right.
just,
Well, here's another picture of some guys dealing with this. Um, and it's once again tough to see. How they describe it is large protein growths called keratin. It's kind of the same material that makes up horns, hooves, claws, and fingernails. And here it is growing out of your skin. But the most troubling part about this is it grows into your skin too and can get into your joints. And so this is where it becomes super painful because if it goes to a certain point, now you lose mobility and it's into your joints, and it becomes pretty scary. So you mentioned before, Dan, how do you get rid of this? Is there any cure? And as far as I could tell, there's no cure for this, which makes it even more troubling, right? But there is some treatment that they can do. Better cases are if you find it early, but there's chemical cryotherapy they can be used to freeze some of this off. There's electrosurgery or laser ablation. Um, and then there's different types of oral medicines that can help as well, depending on how early it's caught. And a lot of these times, it's also like a cancerous tumor that they can go in and just cut out as well. But the problem is it grows back. So you have to keep watching it. And in some cases, they have to keep having things removed. So it's really, really, not cool.
it's like a cancer that's visible. I mean, most cancer sneaks up on you, right? Because it's internal.
Yeah.
This is a cancer that's just right in your face. That is there. Do you think is there feeling like in like I don't know. You think like a hoof, right? You watch those videos of people cleaning like
Mm-hmm.
or redoing a horseshoe, right? And they're like cutting out chunks of it, and you're like, oh, that's got to hurt. You don't
Right.
have any feeling. There's no nerve endings in there.
Right. And I think that's
But
the case here as well.
it's the same thing.
Except for when it probably closer to the skin and your bones and stuff like that. But like when you get further out, maybe you feel like the pressure of something, but it's not the same thing. Because I think you're right. It's from what I've read, it's the pain is more when they have pain. It's closer to the surface of their skin and bones and that sort of thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there were two crazy conditions here that people out there may not know about, but they exist. So
Very strange.
I think we'll move on to our next topic. And our next topic, I want to start off by saying this. So back in episode 7, I spent a little bit of time talking about missing 411. Now, some people know what that is. Some people don't. There's a gentleman, David Politis, who does some research. He's had some books and films at this point that talks about people that disappear in an unexpected way. So essentially, sometimes it's right next to somebody, only feet away from somebody else, and they disappear. And it's always in national forests. So it's really interesting and worth taking a look at some of his material. I was just at Phenomicon recently, and I got a chance to listen to one of his presentations, and it was really pretty astonishing, like the number of people that go missing and how nobody can tell, like where they went. But I'm bringing that up simply because our next topic. This is another young girl with a condition on her arm. I forgot this picture. Sorry. Okay, moving on to the next topic, though. We're talking about one of the first settlements in the Americas by the Pilgrims and European explorers, and I think it was around 1580ish, something like that. And what we're talking about today is a whole community that just disappears, and it's kind of crazy. The stories of about 100 people that tried to settle, and then all of a sudden, one of their main community people, founders, leaves to get some more supplies, tries to go back to England. And then when he comes back a few years later, because there were a lot of obstacles that he couldn't get back. But when he came back, everybody's gone. Do you know anything about this story?
Yeah, no, I dug deep into this. This fascinated me. This was really intriguing. Not that the other topics weren't, but
Sure.
this one really really sparked some intrigue.
Do you want to share a little bit of what you found when you looked into it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep going from where you left off there. I mean,
Okay.
think of how crazy this is. I mean, and to continue that story, right? So 3 years goes by. He finally can come back, right? Because of all the stuff, all the turmoil. I think they were going to war with Spain at the time. The Queen was like, "Hey, we need all our ships here, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
Finally gets back. 3 years is a long time, though, right? I mean, 3 years to leave. What was 100 settlers, including the first person. So the first English person born on American soil, right?
Yeah.
Including so to come back 3 years later and not a trace and very few clues as to what happened, right?
Yeah.
The homes that were built, they were all dismantled, which I found fascinating. The fence line in this picture you're seeing, kind of, I don't know what the right term is for it, but essentially a barricade fence around the whole encampment, that's still there.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, just the whole circumstance. I mean, it was so long ago, right? And records are so probably just journals, right?
Right.
It's fun to piece this together, and it's fascinating where it goes from there.
Well, and it's one of the saddest parts is a human part of this, which is this first settler, John White. It's his granddaughter, right? That you mentioned, the first child born. And as a grandfather myself, one of the biggest things I always want to do is see my grandkids. So first of all, for him to be away from that granddaughter for 3 years must have broke his heart. But I know how excited he must have been to hope to see her again. But then to find what he found, which you just described, which is really an mysteriously abandoned location that 100+ people are missing. It probably drove him crazy trying to figure out where are they, what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about Croatoa as you were doing?
Yeah. So, and correct me on this, because I had in two different places. One place said carved in a tree or in a post.
Yes.
Was the letters CRO, and then in another place it said Croatoa was carved into place. Was it both, or was it just one of those?
I've kind of read two different situations or two different descriptions of it. Hard to say which one it was. But I think the majority believe that it was written on one tree, kind of like what we see on the screen. But there's room for debate on that.
Right. I guess it would lead you to the same conclusion, right? CRO or Croatoa. I mean, it was an Indian tribe on a neighboring island named Croatoa, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's changed its name since then. I know that, but it would lead, if someone was to leave a clue, well, what would you surmise from that? One, would you immediately think, oh, the Croatoa came and killed them? The Croatoa came, they joined the Croatoa? Yeah, there's so many possibilities there.
Yeah, and I think part of the story also, depending on where you get your information from, is that there was a slight chance that John White believed that, hey, if for some reason you have to leave this area, write down, like this, where you might be going. And so some people say that's kind of what happened, which really made it difficult because that's not where they were. And they were never found again, actually. So who knows?
What do you think happened?
Well, I mean, I think it really comes down to what their relationship was with the natives at that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, and there were so many different tribes. So like you might have good relations with one, but then another one comes in, they were fighting amongst themselves, let alone the white man. So who knows? I feel like they probably were taken, scattered, some killed, but that's just based on thought. I don't have
Yeah.
any details there. But it's sad. I feel um, just heartbroken for John White. You
Yeah.
know.
I don't know. I feel like I'm a little more on the hopeful side of.
Mm-hmm.
I did see there was a history channel. Did you happen to stumble across this? The History Channel did an episode on this,
No, I didn't.
and I think I'll send you the link after. It was a fascinating. I think it was like 40 minutes.
Cool.
But they actually, I think, with some of the resources, first they explored how many people are fascinated by this story. There are groups that yearly some like an archaeologist from England and a guy, they've got like these organizations, they'll meet up and search for relics, for artifacts, coins. They've found like a sword, they've found a gun,
Oh wow.
copper that they tested that had to have been smelted in England or Ireland, that was in the camp. Anyways, so there's a huge movement around this where people are searching for answers, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
But they were doing DNA testing. That's what I was going to get to. Was
Yes.
the History Channel, I think, threw some money at this, I would assume, and they're doing some DNA testing of people in that area with similar last names. I don't know. I don't know if they had like a conclusive, like, oh, this is that. It was one of those bits where it didn't feel like they could say, oh, definitively this person. They couldn't even say the guy's name. Was a descendant from that group, that colony, right? The lost colony that had I don't know, somehow got incorporated into an Indian tribe somewhere. They don't have like anything more specific than that, but that could have been. It's just that you hear all those horror stories, right? There was there was a lot of violence on both sides, and I'm not taking a stance or anything. I just know that a lot of bad stuff happened back in that time. You never know, but yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up. I'm glad you brought up the genetic or the DNA testing, because that is a tool today that really can get us a lot closer to answers than any time in the past in history. So yeah, hopefully, I hear what you're saying, and hopefully it all turned out okay. Maybe they just got acclimated, grew into another tribe, became friendly, and then traveled. That would be the best story. But
yeah, that would be nice.
I do know that John White died probably of a with a broken heart, because he passed away a few years after coming here and never being able to find them. So I think that would have been me. I would have died of a broken heart that way.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. A missing colony or community. Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, and a missing colony that came many years before Jamestown. You know what I mean? Like they would have been the big first, English colony. Like, that's huge. That's everyone knows Jamestown, and when was Jamestown? It was like 10 years later. Like,
right. I think so.
I don't know. It's a huge, I hadn't even heard about it. Again, like this is something that's big. I don't know how I didn't hear about this till now. You know what I mean? Like bits of history that you kind of.
That's what we do here, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. We bring up these things that people may not know. And I love that. Cool. Thanks for sharing your research on it as well, because it's definitely worth looking into if people have an interest, because there's definitely some unsolved mystery there, and it's just fascinating, really.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Okay. We are going to hop into our next section here, which is a few random little things. These are strange misfortunes. Now, originally, like I said, we were going to do this episode and run it in October. We didn't. So I thought it would be fun to come up with misfortunes in October, but may not quite work out that way, but we're still going to use it anyway. So here's a story, right? October 1914. This is a house that was owned by Frank Lloyd Wright. He was a famous architect. Most people will have heard of that name. Very famous. And he had a a person working for him. It was a servant or a waiter, or not a waiter, I guess, but a servant, somebody that worked for him. And the crazy thing is, this individual committed a mass murder spree. They killed 7 people, and not just killed them with a hatchet. And then the person lit part of the home on fire. And so that's a terrible story. Why would I be talking about that, right? Thing is, this young man, Julian Carlton, when he did this, or right after he did this, he thought, I'm taking my life. I don't know what was going through his head. Maybe he felt bad. Maybe he didn't want to get caught. I'm not sure. But he decided to drink hydrochloric acid and commit suicide, which must have been terrible. But guess what? It failed to kill him. So when the police came, he was still alive, and they brought him to jail. He went to a jail in Wisconsin, Dodgeville, Wisconsin. And the thing is, the damage he did to himself was so severe to his esophagus and that sort of thing that he couldn't even put anything down his throat. So he essentially starved to death over the next 47 days. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy.
What a way to go.
What a way to go, right? And so, hey, well, never do this, people, but you got to have a better plan. That's for darn sure. Because he just did something terrible, and then on top of that, he did something terrible to himself too. So it must have been miserable. So,
was there ever any explanation for why did he kill the 7?
Not that I could find, but I didn't do a super deep dig into it. But I think people should check it out. It's interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. That's one. We've got 3 to quickly pop on. This next one, this is a strange one. This one involves, you ready? 3 people and a dog. Okay. And this building. Here's the story. October 21st, 1988. There was a cute little poodle called Catchy. And what happened? That little poodle fell out the window 13 floors up, came all the way down, landed on a 75-year-old lady, and of course killed them both. But it's not just that. When that happened, there was a 46-year-old lady who was standing by there crossing the street, couldn't believe what she saw, and she was fatally hit by a bus watching that other accident. And if that wasn't bad enough, there was another man who, when he saw all this, dropped with a heart attack, and he died. So I'm bringing this up because what a weird chain of events, right? It's bizarre. It's one of those things that you don't expect to see happen. What do you think about that?
I mean, taking, like, if you take any of the supernatural away from that, and you're just thinking, okay, probability wise, like any single one of these things happening, probability is close to 0.
Right.
Probability of them chain reaction happening one after the other, and that's short of it's a non-existent number. It's a crazy.
Right.
Wow. That's all I got.
Yet,
that is nuts.
These are the strange things that happen.
Yep.
So when you look at the screen here, the first thing I'm going to tell people is watch out for flying poodles. I don't mean to laugh about it, but you got to make it fun because it's so crazy and bizarre.
That is, yeah.
All right. One more short story of a strange, kind of unexpected and inconvenient situation. So here we're looking at a cake here. And one of the funnest things that people do these days, especially, is they have these gender reveal parties, right? Have you ever gone to one of those?
I'm sure I have. I've seen more memes and videos of crazy ones than I've been to. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's a big thing. I mean, people are doing it all the time. I would not normally go to one, but of course, because I have kids and grandkids, I found myself at a number of these, and that's just the way it worked. But here's the crazy thing. So this happened in Marion County, Iowa, October 27th, 2019. So there is this 56-year-old woman, and she wants to take pictures and um, kind of post some things for this gender reveal. And some of the people there at the party thought it would be a really cool idea to have sparks and all these different things to, to kind of celebrate and make it a big deal. So somebody, I'm not sure who, decides to fill a steel umbrella stand with, what do you think? Gunpowder. They thought this was going to give off sparks, but unfortunately, instead of that, it actually became a pipe bomb. And so, unfortunately, when this thing went off, it's essentially a bomb. It sent a piece of metal straight across to this 56-year-old woman, struck her in the head, and the metal fragment killed her instantly. Sad, right? Now,
Awful.
why do we bring these things up, right? Just because you would not expect this. But I don't know about you, Dan. I look back at my teenage years sometimes, and some of the stuff that I did, I go, how did I live through that? Right? I don't know if you've had those same experiences, but the thing is, this happens. This doesn't just stop happening when you're a teenager or when you're, in your early 20s. People do stuff all the time, and they miscalculate, or they assume nothing will happen, and then these things occur. What worse could happen than something like this at your party? You're never going to forget this. It's crazy.
I'm surprised only one person died during that at this party. I'm
Yeah,
actually surprised more people didn't die.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's probably the silver lining, is that it was actually not more people that,
Yeah,
because that
brought
was a pipe
bomb.
bomb,
Brought a
basically.
pipe bomb. That's awful.
Yeah, crazy.
No, like you said though, as a kid, I did something stupid like this, but it was roughly intentional. We made a bomb out of some fireworks. I don't remember what it was, sparklers or flowers. I don't remember. Put a glass jar over it. We light it. We run. I remember just seeing a chunk of glass go right past my head.
Oh man,
I'll never forget that. But at any moment, that glass, I mean, I'm not saying that would have killed me, but I mean, that glass could have hit someone in the eye, could have hit someone in a weird spot that,
right. Right.
We're all,
well, that's the thing, right? Like, it's, we live in a world of choices, forks in the road, minor little things that change and alter our path. We're alive today. Maybe we wouldn't have if we stepped this way or that way. It's crazy. And so I think the big takeaway from these stories mostly is, hey, people, please think carefully before you do certain things, because weird things happen.
Yeah.
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 Don't be
some of it's out of your control.
Yeah. Don't become a statistic, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's crazy. All right.
Yeah.
So we've come to the end of this episode, Dan. It was fun, and it was cool to chat and talk about these things. Did you have a specific topic that you found most interesting in today's episode?
I think, and it probably showed. Maybe I was probably a little overly giddy about the Lost Colony thing. I don't know why that just really piqued some sort of like, I don't know, instinctual treasure hunting, mystery hunt, like solving Scooby-Doo, some sort of weird instinct in me. I was fascinated by that. That was a really fun thing to research.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was cool too. I liked all those topics. The last three were kind of things to help you think what not to do.
Yeah.
So that there's always value in that as well. But there was a special thing about the Lost Colony that really kind of hits you a little bit. Because what could have been, right? Like that is something that history could have been different if that colony survived. Who knows, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. But then, of course, I also like the strange medical conditions too, because, I believe our bodies there's so much balance that occurs within this body. And you throw something off or something changes, and you never know what you wind up getting, some weird disease or condition. And people are experiencing this all over the world. And fortunately, in low numbers, but we don't even know about it until we run across these stories. So it's interesting to me.
It
Well,
is.
Dan, I've enjoyed it.
Me too.
You definitely want you back. We're going to have you as a normal guy on here as long as time permits for you and stuff. Is there anything you want to say to the people out there as we end this one?
No, I mean, I haven't. No, I don't. Nothing really to add. I feel like everything was said, and I mimic your sentiment here. It's exciting and it's interesting to explore the strange, the unknowns, the unexplainable things in this world, and it brings out a spark. It gives you this. There's a little bit of fire. There's a spark of life that you don't really know is there until something triggers it. I love it, and it's exciting, and I hope you keep doing it. I'm excited to see more.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to co-hosting with you on some of these going forward. It should be a lot of fun, and maybe some other topics as well that are more deep dive and more because we do that sometimes too. We'll pick a topic or two and really dive deep and spend the whole episode tackling it, and so that will be fun too as well. So the only thing I want to say to everybody out there is have a great holiday season, number one, and number two, remember there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality, so keep your eyes, ears, and minds open, and until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.